All right, we have an incredible slate of games this weekend. But before we get into it, please like, comment, subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. I would love to grow this channel, and I need your help to do that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and break down some games, starting with the Texas State Fair. That's right, the Red River Shootout is upon us. And honestly, this game looks a lot different than what we thought it would going into the season. What baffles me right now is that Texas is still favored to win this game, and that's with the assumption that John Mateer will play for Oklahoma. And when I look at Texas, I see a team that doesn't have a serviceable quarterback. They have an offensive line that's just completely atrocious. And that's a really big problem when you're going up against a Brent Venables defense like this that might actually be even better than the squad that you played last week in Gainesville. Now, sure, Oklahoma, they may be missing their superstar quarterback in John Mateer, and even if he does play, he's probably not going to be 100%. And the run game has basically been non-existent for them, but I still think Oklahoma finds a way to get this win. It's not like they're throwing out a true freshman quarterback or anything. They got Michael Hawkins Jr., and he's the same guy that started for them last year after they basically took Arnold out of the game. He's not Mateer, but he's experienced and he's efficient enough to get it done, especially behind a much better offensive line than what Oklahoma had last year. He didn't look incredible against Kent State, I'll give you that, but I don't think that's a huge issue because I think Oklahoma's defense can hold Texas down and give him the breathing room he needs to have success in this game. And if Texas is going to win this game, I think they're going to need to win the turnover battle. I just don't see them sustaining drives in this game consistently against this Oklahoma defense. And maybe, just maybe, not having Mateer or having at least a limited Mateer will light a fire under Oklahoma's run game. They've got a really talented tailback room. They just haven't been able to pop yet, and this may be the game that happens. We've already seen Oklahoma go toe-to-toe against a team that has a really great defense and a shaky offense when they face Michigan, and despite a few big mistakes, they still came out with a pretty dominant win. So whether they have Mateer or not, I think Oklahoma's going to find a way to win this game and get it done in Dallas. So give me the Sooners. All right, next let's talk about Missouri versus Alabama. And Alabama is coming off of back-to-back emotional wins, and now they've got to go on the road to face a Missouri team that is undefeated and coming off of a bye week. And if we're talking about game dynamics here, it's a clear edge for Missouri. The Tide are due for a letdown spot, and honestly, this feels like it could be that spot. And it's a bigger test than I think a lot of people realize for Alabama. On defense, Missouri is elite at the line of scrimmage. They get after the quarterback, they stuff the run, and that could cause Alabama a lot of trouble. Ty Simpson, he's an efficient passer, sure, but that's when he's had a lot of time to throw, and the last time we've really seen him under pressure was against Florida State, and we all remember how that went. And yes, Alabama has found some rhythm in the ground game last week, but let's be real, they have not faced a front like this all season. Not even Georgia was this disruptive up front. So if Simpson can find time to get the ball out quickly, there are definitely holes in Missouri secondary that can be exploited. And Alabama, they have the weapons to exploit that. We've seen it. But the real concern is on the other side of the ball for me. This Missouri offense has a really dangerous ground game. Ahmed Hardy might be the best running back in the country. His backup isn't far behind. And then you got Bo Prabula, who can beat you with his legs as well. If Missouri gets out to an early lead, they will boa constrictor you, control the clock, drain possessions, and keep your offense sitting cold on the sideline. That's just the style of ball that they're going to try to play in this game. Now, if Alabama gets to an early lead and forces Missouri to throw, that's when we really see what Bo Prabula is made of. He's been solid, but this is a totally different level of a test than what he's seen so far. Because it's worth noting that Missouri hasn't really faced a top-tier opponent yet. Their biggest tests have been like Kansas or South Carolina, both pretty decent, but not Alabama's level. So, yeah, there is a chance that Missouri is a bit of a paper tiger, but I don't think that's the case. I think Missouri is legit. And while Alabama is the better team on paper, the situational dynamics, the bye week, the physicality, the emotional fatigue, they tilt this matchup in Missouri's favor, so give me the Tigers to win this game. And moving on now to Oregon versus Indiana. Last year, Indiana was rolling until they went to Columbus and got humbled by Ohio State. This matchup against Oregon and Autzen feels pretty similar, honestly, but I also think this is a much different and much better Indiana team. They're tougher, they're deeper, and honestly, roster-wise, they're not all that far off from Oregon. We've already seen them blow out Illinois. We've seen them grind out a win over Iowa. Not pretty, but still effective. And Fernando Mendoza at quarterback, he is a problem. They are a strong team along the line of scrimmage, and overall, it's just a really, really good football team. But they're facing an Oregon squad that is also really, really good. They're young, they're fast, they're explosive, they're well coached, but both teams in this game are going to want to lean pretty heavily on their ground game. So the first thing to watch here is the trenches. Which defensive line is going to win that battle? Because this is not one of those games that I think Oregon's going to be able to bully the other team across from them. Indiana is number 2 in tackles and top 10 in sacks. So they've got a really, really good defensive front. They can disrupt you. They can stuff your run game. And Oregon, they can do the exact same thing. So if both defenses shut down the run, this game suddenly becomes way more fascinating to me because who are you going to trust when it turns into a passing game? Whenever you have to lean on the passing game. For me, I think it comes down to quarterback play. Fernando Mendoza has the experience. He's played in big moments, and he's got a go-to guy in Elijah Surratt. On the other side, though, you've got Dante Moore. He's young. He's super talented, but we still haven't seen him truly rattled yet. He's a bit of a wild card. But in a game like this against a defense like Indiana's, we might finally see him get rattled. Now, you do have to factor in home field advantage. Autzen is no joke. Oregon is coming off of a bye week, and they've got way more ways to win this game, more weapons, more versatility. So if I'm being completely logical, my mind is telling me to pick Oregon. They're at home, they've had the extra rest, and they're built to win in multiple ways. However, my heart says to pick Indiana, and I can't even fully explain it. It's the same gut feeling I had whenever I picked Florida State to beat Alabama, or Georgia Tech to beat Clemson, or Vanderbilt to beat South Carolina. Sometimes you just feel it. So if Indiana loses, even if they get handled, I won't be shocked, but I've got to ride with my gut here like I did earlier in the season so many times. Give me the Hoosiers. Hopefully they don't let me down. Moving on now to the South's oldest rivalry, Georgia, Auburn, Jordan-Hare Stadium. And before we talk about the teams in this game, we have to acknowledge the voodoo magic that lives in that stadium. Because every few years, logic just evaporates in there. Doesn't matter who's better on paper, weird things happen at Jordan-Hare. So yes, there's always that factor that could play a role in this game. But when we strip away the chaos and look at the game logically, I actually think it's a pretty simple game to break down. The winner of this game is going to be whoever controls the line of scrimmage, particularly when Auburn has the ball. Because there are two storylines that completely dictate how this game is going to go in my mind. On one side, you have Auburn's offensive line, who has been a massive disappointment. They're allowing pressure constantly, and their quarterback, Jackson Arnold, tends to hold on to the ball a little too long before letting it go. And on the other side, you've got Georgia, a team that has been surprisingly weak at getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks this season. So something has to give here. Is Georgia's lack of a pass rush going to let Arnold find the time and the rhythm to get balls into the hands of those dangerous receivers against a very vulnerable Georgia secondary? Or will Auburn's poor protection and slow release from Arnold finally give Georgia the opportunity they need to force turnovers and get the sacks, making Auburn one-dimensional again? If I knew the answer to that question right now, I'd bet the house on that outcome. But my gut is telling me that Arnold is going to hit a few big plays to Coleman, maybe even a couple chunk gains that get the stadium rocking. But I also think he'll be under duress most of the game. Georgia may not rack up sacks, but I expect them to get enough disruption to make him uncomfortable and force some, for some big interceptions, maybe some big mistakes. And honestly, that's going to have to happen because Auburn's receivers are plenty good enough to torch Georgia if they get time. Luckily, Auburn is a run-heavy team, and Georgia has been really good at limiting the ground game for so many teams. Now, on the other side of the ball, Auburn's defense is a lot better than people think. They're disciplined, they tackle well, and they can create problems in the red zone. But I actually think that Georgia's offense has shown that they could be really, really good when Mike Bobo isn't calling back-to-back screen passes like it's 2013. I like Gunnar Stockton. I like Zachariah Branch and the weapons that Georgia has in this game. So I think this one stays close, closer than I as a Georgia fan want, especially with Jordan-Hare having that voodoo magic in play. But at the end of the day, I trust my dogs to make big plays when it matters and walk out with a win. So give me Georgia, but not without a few heart attacks along the way. Moving on now to Michigan versus USC, and USC is actually a 2.5-point favorite at home here, and honestly, I have no idea why. How many times do we have to watch USC get physically dominated against teams with the exact same makeup as this Michigan team before we learn our lesson? We've seen this movie play out so many times. USC looks fast, they look flashy, they're explosive, right up until they line up against a team that can just punch them in the mouth. Yes, that offense is explosive. They can light up the scoreboard, but when they're facing a team that wins in the trenches, suddenly all that explosiveness just fades away. The tempo slows, the big plays dry up, that quarterback whisperer magic doesn't really matter as much when your offensive line or your defensive line is just getting bullied. And sure, people love to say that Michigan isn't built to come from behind, but that was also true the last time these teams played last year. That Michigan offense was worse than this year's, and they still marched right down the field and beat USC on a 2-minute drill without even throwing a pass. And why? Because USC does not have the bodies up front to make those critical stops when it matters the most. And until USC can prove to me that they can win in the trenches against a physical team like Michigan, I just can't pick them in matchups like this. Just 2 weeks ago, we watched them lose to Illinois. And I think Michigan is a much better team than Illinois, especially when it comes to physicality and defense. Sure, Maava looked great throwing the ball to Lemon, and they hit some pretty explosive plays, but they still lost the game, and that's the blueprint. It's exactly the kind of team that USC struggles with every single year. Meanwhile, this Michigan team is not the same offensively limited group they were last season. They may not have the superstar wide receivers or anything like that, but Bryce Underwood is a huge problem. He can extend plays, he can make smart throws, and more importantly, he can make things happen on the ground, which is huge against a defense as bad as USC's. So yeah, USC might be favored, but until they prove to me that they can hold their own physically for 4 quarters, I'm not buying it. Give me the Wolverines emphatically in this game. Moving on now to Florida versus A&M. And Florida is coming off of a really big win against Texas, and to their credit, they finally figured something out on offense. They leaned on the ground game, opened up the pass game a little bit, and the defense, well, they've been pretty much solid all year, but now they head on the road to College Station, one of the toughest environments in the country, to an undefeated Texas A&M team. And this is where I think we see Florida come back down to earth, honestly, because as good as that win looked over Texas, A&M is just flat out a better team than Texas. They've got a better quarterback, a better offensive line, better ground game, a better defense, and they get to play this one at home in front of like 100,000 fans, their 12th man. And that's a lot to overcome for a young quarterback like DJ Lagway and this Florida team after we've seen them in these moments just fail. I don't think Florida will be able to run the ball effectively against this front, and if they can't do that, then the pass game's not going to open up, and Lagway's going to have to shoulder the offense for himself again, and that's when the mistakes come in, especially in a hostile environment like this against one of the most aggressive defenses in the country. Now, A&M, they're not perfect. They're heavily penalized, and they are pretty prone to self-inflicted wounds, but the difference here is that they can capitalize on mistakes. Florida hasn't been able to capitalize on mistakes, so I trust A&M in that regard. I could see this, going one of two ways. Either we get a low-scoring game, which is like a defensive slugfest, or A&M is going to run away with it on the scoreboard. And I think either way, A&M wins the game. A&M has shown that they can win multiple ways, and that's what makes them so dangerous. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I am really, really high on Texas A&M this year. I love Mike Elko. I love this team. I think it's a pretty balanced team. Mario Craver. They've got Casey Concepcion, Marcel Reed. I love the team. I love the players. I think they are going to be a really, really tough force to beat this year. So while Florida is improving, I don't think they stand a chance in this one. Give me A&M and give me them big in this game. And next, let's talk about LSU versus South Carolina. This game defines the season for both of these teams. For South Carolina, this is it. This is the must-win game. You drop a third game here in the playoff talk, it's done. For LSU, it's not quite do or die quite yet, but given how brutal their schedule is down the stretch, you do not want to lose this game. And look, it's a night game in Death Valley. That alone gives LSU a serious edge, but it's also what Josh Pate affectionately calls Cocktober. And if you follow college football long enough, you know that the Gamecocks have a habit of getting weird and dangerous this time of year. Now, let's get into the actual football. Both quarterbacks came into the season with a lot of hype and a lot of expectations, but both have pretty drastically underdelivered. Nussmeier, he's playing pretty banged up, which explains part of it, but every week it feels like maybe this is the week that he kind of gets back to being himself again. And on the other side, Lenore Sellers, he's not really the problem for South Carolina. The problem is who he's throwing to. Outside of Nick Harbor, the receivers just are pretty thin. There's not many people for him to throw to. So even though LSU's offense has not lit the world on fire, I still think their ceiling is a lot higher. The talent is there. It just hasn't clicked yet. That said, They are not a dynamic team. Do not expect them to run it down anyone's throats, even if Durham is active. That means that Nussmeier is going to have to shoulder a lot of the load again, and that's a dangerous ask when you have Dylan Stewart coming after you all night, knowing you're going to throw it 9 times out of 10. I'm expecting pressure. I'm expecting sacks. I'm expecting chaos up front, enough to keep this game tight for a while. But here's the thing. LSU has something that they haven't had in years, and that's an elite defense. Blake Baker's group flies around. They hit hard. They close space fast. They'll make Sellers uncomfortable and probably force a turnover or two. And because of that, I don't think Nuss has to play hero ball. The defense is going to carry this one, maybe even score. So give me the Tigers in Death Valley. South Carolina, they'll hang in a little bit, but LSU's defense slams the door late. That's what I think. Moving on now to Ohio State versus Illinois, and I'm not overthinking this one. Give me Ohio State. You can try to sell me on the road game aspect of it, but there are just too many things working in the Buckeyes' favor for me to even blink on this one. First off, we've seen Ohio State go on the road in louder, rowdier environments across time zones, and they still look just as dominant. Second, I cannot shake off what Illinois did or didn't do against Indiana. 63-10. I know I keep bringing it up, but I can't get it out of my head. That's not a bad day. It's a collapse, and it's hard to watch that and then turn around and pick them to win against really anyone with a pulse, much less Ohio State. Now, sure, if Illinois somehow finds a way to win this game, that whole narrative is going to flip on its head. I'd give them credit. I'd trust them again, but that's not happening. If Indiana can beat you like that, what do you think Ohio State's going to be able to do? And I'm not even going to disrespect Indiana here. That's not what I'm trying to do. They're a legit squad this year. Heck, I just picked them to beat Oregon. But even if Ohio State plays at half the level Indiana did that day, they still win this game comfortably. Illinois scored 10 points against Indiana. Now they're facing one of the best defenses in the country. And that's before we even mention the weapons on offense, the depth, the speed, the balance. Julian Sand keeps looking more and more comfortable every single week. But the best part is he doesn't even have to be Superman. The defense is doing the heavy lifting. They're playing complete complementary football. So yeah, I'm taking Ohio State confidently. And honestly, I'll take them to cover the 14.5 point spread without even breaking a sweat. I just don't see a path for Illinois here. And hey, if I'm wrong and Illinois makes me look like a fool, good. I'll take it. I love to see Ohio State lose, so bring it on. Anyways, that's all for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. And again, please like, comment, subscribe. Peace.